Ladies and gentlemen, good morning or good afternoon. My name is Nita Gonzalez and I'm with Esri. Welcome to this telecom webinar. We're glad you can join us. Today we'll have Randy France, our telecommunications industry strategy lead, presenting, as well as our technical evangelist for telecommunications, Patrick Coles. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Randy.
Thanks, Nydia. I'd like to welcome everybody. I know your schedule's very busy, and I appreciate you taking time out to join us today. Let me run you through a little bit of our telecommunications webinar series that we have planned for 2017. We have a really good lineup coming up this year. We're starting off with our winter-spring kickoff here with our foundation webinar, which is today, and then we'll be having the second Wednesday in March and May to talk about serviceability. Companies make tremendous investments in building out their networks, and they want to be able to sell that, and so we'll be talking about ways that we can educate and get the information to our salespeople to make sure that they can monetize those networks. Then in May, we'll be talking about bringing the field to the engineer. A lot of GIS technology capabilities can be applied to reduce those number of what we call pretty much non-productive field visits by the engineer. So the ability to collect data and to bring it to the engineer allow acceleration in designing, planning networks. And then we'll be starting in the fall, kicking off our series on August 16th with the engineering and planning. A lot of GIS technology can really improve the engineering and planning to optimize, once again, that capital investment. And then we'll be talking about, in the fall, in October, some sales tools, some tools that will be improving the sales and, once again, being able to improve the revenue and really make GIS a very powerful tool for the sales and marketing teams. And then lastly, in December, we'll be talking about operational intelligence, the ability to use the GIS to create dashboards and to be able to really understand what's happening in your operations, financial performance, as well as in the network. So that's our series. We're very excited to be kicking it off today with our foundation webinar. And now I will be turning it over to Patrick Coles. Patrick is our technology evangelist in telecommunications in our pattern and practices group. So Patrick, take it away.
Thanks, Randy. Good morning, everybody. So for this Telog webinar series, we wanted to start off with a foundational webinar in which we cover kind of the foundations of Web GIS and where the Web GIS pattern has taken us over the past few years. We're going to demonstrate that Web GIS pattern and show that in action. And then we're going to cover some of the new Web GIS capabilities at ArcGIS 10.5. As many of you know, ArcGIS 10.5 was just released at the end of last year. Then we'll do a demonstration of a new product that is part of 10.5 called Insights for ArcGIS. And we'll finish up today with how to get started with your Web GIS and some things to consider. So traditionally, GIS has been thought of as a core system of record, managing your location-based information and data, and traditionally a geodatabase, being able to use spatial tools to analyze that data, create results, and then store that back into a system of record. Well, over the years, GIS has been evolving from that desktop solution and client-server solution to a new Web GIS pattern. And within this new Web GIS pattern, there's a variety of new capabilities, functionality, and applications that have been developed. So because of this Web GIS pattern, there's whole new avenues in the content area, being able to pull in real-time information from a variety of different sources through web services. There's a whole new set of applications out there, web-based applications and mobile-based applications. There's also a wide variety of implementation techniques for Web GIS, either in the cloud as a software as a service, or deploying it in your own infrastructure. And it's all open and agile and easy to configure. And finally, there's been far more advances in technology than I can ever remember, and Web GIS has caught up with those technology patterns and enabled big data solutions and real-time capabilities to pull in hundreds of thousands of events per second from the Internet of Things. And so with this Web GIS pattern, there's a new transformational architecture where we can take that core system of record, which GIS has always been, and integrate it into systems of engagement to be able to share that authoritative content to the rest of your organization, to the public, and to other members of the community through web services and through what we call web maps. And then we can integrate in systems of insight where we can provide analytical tools to anyone in an organization to be able to analyze that data being shared through a system of engagement and be able to really perform some high-end analytics to really get the most insight out of our geographic data. And these three systems combined in the Web GIS pattern is really evolving the telecom of the future. So the ArcGIS platform is a fully integrated Web GIS that supports not only the business but also allows for Web GIS to be a part of new products and offerings with visualization techniques, data management, and analytic capabilities. So in this diagram, we can see over here on the left-hand side our traditional GIS professionals, producers of content, producers of maps, being able to create that authoritative content in a wide variety of ArcGIS apps and then share that information through the ArcGIS platform. And within the ArcGIS platform, we have additional analysis tools that give system of insight, data management tools for that system of record, and visualization tools for that system of engagement to be able to share all of that information through web maps. Part of the ArcGIS platform is the web service nature of it, being able to expose those web services into systems of engagement or mapping portals, manage all of that content, and even expose it through our open APIs and software development kits to allow for developers to be able to develop directly on top of all of that content and web services being shared out. That really comes in handy when you're integrating in with different OSS and BSS within an organization and you want to expose the GIS into those other systems and allow other producers and consumers of that content, other members who maybe don't have GIS experience, to be able to access that authoritative content and even start contributing back. So this is really a fully integrated platform where you have producers and consumers of all this content sharing maps and web services back and forth. So now we're going to go ahead and do a quick demonstration of kind of the Web GIS pattern in action and kind of show this in a couple different scenarios. So I've opened up ArcGIS Pro, which is Esri's desktop application for managing kind of the geographic content, doing some analysis, and creating maps. Again, the desktop tool has traditionally been that core system of record tool for managing all of that. And here we have a raw raster that has come out of our engineering solution for our coverage data. What we want to do is turn this into a vector format and a coverage map so we can then share that information product with other members of our organizations to be applied in a few different business workflows. So using the tools within ArcGIS, we can take that raw raster format, we can use our spatial tools to modify it and produce an output result, which is our vectorized coverage map. So once we have a more readable format and a format that we want our data to be in, we can then take this data, add some additional data sets in here, our backhaul fiber and our backbone fiber, as well as our cell sites, and now share this map up to the web. So instead of maybe potentially printing this off or having this be a static map, we want to make this a live web map where this data is now live up in the web or in our own network infrastructure on-premise. So using the tools within ArcGIS, we can quickly share these layers or the entire web map directly up to our system of engagement. We can give it a name, summary, tag, so we can quickly discover it and have other members discover it as well. And we can set our sharing capabilities if we want to share this with our entire organization or just certain groups or certain members of our organization. So once we've shared that authoritative data and that web map, we can now access that within our system of engagement. Now what we see here is our portal environment, which is kind of our system of engagement for Southern Florida Telecom, which is just an example implementation telecom. This is kind of the look and feel of how a communication service provider could configure their portal and enable sharing collaboration across multiple departments. So right on the home page we have our top items listed here that's all configurable, and the part of the portal is being able to configure groups that allow for members to be a part of that group and only get access to the content that's been shared into that group. So if I go into our wireless groups, we'll see that we've created high-level groups here for all the different departments within our wireless organization. And then within each of these groups, there's a set of maps and apps that we've configured that help members of, in this case, the operations group, do their job on a day-to-day basis. So dashboards for managing network operations, wireless maps, coverage processing maps. So all of that content we can now share to members of this particular group. So as a member of the operations group, when I log into our system of engagement or our portal environment, I get access to this content, which is now all live through the web services. So what I want to do now is open up that same web map that we created in the desktop and then share this map into some configurable applications that help different groups in our organization perform their day-to-day job. So here we have our web map and our web mapping environment within Portal. What I can do is add additional content, so any other layers that have been shared by other members of the organization we can add to this map quickly. We can add additional demographic data from our Living Atlas, or we can change the base map if we wanted to. And we can also perform some analysis on this data. That's all web services based. So we're exposing these analysis tools to other members of our organization to be able to do analysis themselves. In this case, I'm not going to do any of that, and I'm going to keep the web map how it is, but I'm going to show how we can now take this web map and then share it again to other groups within our organization or our entire organization, or I may want to add additional functionality to just this web map so we can configure an application using our hundreds of configurable apps or our web application builder. So once we've configured a few applications, those are now shared with those groups and give additional capabilities to specific business groups. So a few examples of those configured applications. One of them is our viewer here, so it's a basic viewer. So now if I'm a member of Southern Florida Telecom and I just want to know where we've got services, coverage, I can log in. I've got access to this simple viewer. Allows me to search for some cell site information, maybe some customer information, but that same web map is now feeding this particular application. Another application here is our bulk serviceability tool. So this might be geared towards the sales division of this particular organization. So it's the same data, it's just configured in this application differently to help them do their job. So what this tool allows the salesperson to do is grab a spreadsheet of customers. In this case, we've got a spreadsheet of addresses from Home Depot, drag that and drop it onto this application and quickly geocode all of those locations and start to look at what services are available at each of those locations, or what is the quality of service at each of those particular locations. So from the sales perspective, it allows them to quickly do a serviceability check on hundreds, if not thousands, of potential business locations. So we can see here down at the bottom, it appended the quality of service at each one of those locations. And then finally, a third example of configuring that same data and reusing it, repurposing it for another use case for our operations group. So this is a dashboard that the network operations group could use to monitor the status of the network. So you can see here in the map, it's that same coverage data, those same layers that are feeding this web map as well. And we can pull in real-time information from the network and incorporate that on top of it. So we can look at alarms in our network and see where we have offline coverage and start to apply some analysis to say how many of our customers are currently affected by these outages. So the great thing about Web GIS is being able to author these web maps and share them to a wide variety of people and reuse the same assets. So we can use the same layers in a variety of different applications that serve multiple web workflows or multiple purposes and not need to redevelop custom applications or redevelop these services each time, and they're all live. So as soon as we're making changes to that data, all those maps that contain those same services are updated. So now we're going to go into what's new at ArcGIS 10.5. What we're going to focus on is ArcGIS Enterprise. So ArcGIS Enterprise is the new name for our ArcGIS Server and portal environment, the ArcGIS Platform being deployed on-premise or in your own infrastructure. Now the main reason for this change is there are a few new products and servers that have been released to really enable enterprise quality and grade capabilities within ArcGIS. So ArcGIS Enterprise is a fully integrated Web GIS with systems of records, systems of engagement, and systems of insight, and it supports real-time information and lots of that information, big data coming in, and enterprise analysis. Some of the new products released are the GeoEvent Server, the Spatiotemporal Big Data Store, the Geo Analytics Server, and the Image Server, all working together to feed your ArcGIS Enterprise, your system of engagement, and sharing that information out. And finally, a new product called Insights for ArcGIS to add to that system of insight. So what's new in our Web GIS system of engagement? Well, we've got this portal technology that sits directly on top of the ArcGIS server. As I mentioned before, it's all web services based, so you can take your data from your ArcGIS data stores, share that up through the server, and then expose those web services in those web maps and quickly configure information products. The portal environment has got identity and security management built directly in. So as I mentioned before, you can provision members of your organization into different groups and then share content into those specific groups to share that directly with only those members. And it's a content management system, so you can set up folder structures to be able to manage all the content, the maps, the apps, the web scenes, all of the geoprocessing tools. You can manage all of that content within the portal environment. And as we've shown in the demonstration, we can do quick configuration of web maps and apps to reduce the time that it takes to stand up some solutions for some business workflows. So what's new in our GIS system of record? We've released a new database structure, our Spatiotemporal Big Data Store. This data store was specifically designed for enterprise amounts of data. So we're talking millions of records being stored within this large big data store. It can sustain tens of thousands of writes per second. So if you are writing to it through GeoEvent Processor, if you are writing to it through other feeds coming in, you can store all that data within this big data store. We also have allowed for elastic search of this data through across multiple nodes. So if you were trying to perform some analysis or query a specific set of data in a specific extent, in a specific time range, you can apply those queries and quickly find that one piece of data. And the other piece is you can perform periodic snapshots of these databases and replicate them over multiple servers for data backup. So really just taking our ArcGIS data store and expanding it out so that you can store lots and lots of geographic content. For our Web GIS system of insight, what we have new is a new product called Insights for ArcGIS. This application directly connects within Portal for ArcGIS. It's kind of a new paradigm, a new way of visualizing the data that is within your organization. It's very intuitive to use and very responsive. Allows for dynamic analysis. You can share up geoprocessing tools and enable them within Insights and perform analytics. And you can have very fast access to data that is coming directly from your ArcGIS server or that is coming from flat tabular databases like Excel or other databases, corporate enterprise databases that you can tap into. So it works with spatial and tabular data. And as we've mentioned before, it's very responsive, and as we'll see, there are charts that you can create as well as maps. So now I'm going to go into a demonstration of Insights and show kind of this new product in action. So here we have Insights for ArcGIS. As we can see on the screen, we have open what we call a workbook. So you can create multiple workbooks within kind of your environment here, kind of all storing your maps and your charts that you've configured. Now Insights is really geared towards kind of the data exploration, the data science behind all the geographic data that we're collecting. So it's really for exploring all of that content in different ways. On the screen we can see a couple maps in what we call cards. So the way that Insights works is you can create different cards, charts or maps or tables that are all kind of stored within this workbook. And the different cards that we can create are maps, a variety of different charts and tables. We can tap into the wide variety of data sources that we have in our organization through our ArcGIS server and the portal environment, or we can tap directly into an Excel database, or as I mentioned before, different database connections. Once we've tapped into those data sources, they show up here on the left-hand side. So I've configured some maps already to look at our node boundaries and our bandwidth capacity history. So the data that we've brought in is the past 12 weeks of data that is being collected from our network and looking at the percent capacity of a particular node week by week by week. We've also brought in some trouble ticket information coming maybe out of our customer experience management system to be able to look at where those trouble tickets are coming in and then try and correlate if those trouble tickets have any correlation with maybe any bandwidth or capacity issues. And so that's what I want to do now, is look and try and see if there are any current issues with our network that might be related to our customers being unhappy and reporting a lot of trouble tickets. So in this first map, we have our total average percent capacity over those 12 weeks. So you can see when I hover over a particular node, we get a pop-up that is showing the average capacity for our entire network, which is about 40%. It's at 40% capacity, and this particular node is at 34% capacity, so just under the average. If we hover to some of the darker nodes, we can see that this particular node is at a higher average than the rest of our network. But we can also look at this week's capacity, previous week's capacity, or any other previous week because we've stored all of that historical data. The other nice thing about Insights is it is all responsive, so we can sync up our maps as well as our charts. So when I select on a particular node, you see that it highlights that feature in the map, and we can see this particular node has very, very high capacity right now. We can scroll down and see exactly where that is in the table and look at the historical trends. So it looks like over the past 12 weeks, the last 2 weeks, it's had a very drastic increase spike in bandwidth capacity. So visualizing this gives me some insight. Looking at it in tabular view gives me some insight, but I need to be able to correlate why potentially we're having these issues or if it is causing any customer experience issues. So I've added another map to our workbook here, another card, in which I've visualized our node information with our customers. So I want to be able to see how many customers we have in this particular region, and if there are any SLA customers in there, or any other insights that I want to be able to pull out. But now I want to bring in our trouble ticket information. So dragging it and dropping it on here, I can create a map, a chart, or a table. So now I want to create a map, and as we can see, it quickly geocoded and populated all of those points. But now I want to visualize this, not based off of just a point symbology, but I want to create a heat map to give me a little bit better visual sense of the groupings of trouble tickets coming in. Next, I want to spatially join all of our trouble tickets within our nodes. So I'm going to take our Tampa nodes, drag them onto a map, and then take our trouble tickets, drag it onto the map, and then perform a spatial aggregation. Let me first deselect that particular node and then drag and drop our trouble tickets. So I want to spatially join our trouble tickets with our nodes and get a total count of trouble tickets within each of our node areas. So now that we've done that, our smart mapping has symbolized it based off of kind of these changing symbol sizes. So now we can see which nodes have a high volume of trouble tickets being reported. And then finally, I want to add a couple additional charts in here to help me kind of narrow down where we might be having issues this week. So we can group all of our nodes into kind of these buckets or bins that kind of designates their current capacity. As we can see, the majority of them fall within the average, but we do have a couple nodes that are in that high percentage space here. And if we select on them, again, we can see exactly where they are in the map, and all of the charts dynamically change. The last chart is a scatter plot in which we are looking at our current capacity versus the average. So this helps me look at our current week and see if there's any outliers or spikes compared to what the average should be. So we can see the two that are highlighted on our right-hand side are the two nodes that currently have kind of a high capacity for this particular week. What I want to do is look at this particular node because it is based on the average for that particular node over the past 12 weeks. This current week, it has spiked. So we want to see what's going on there. Selecting on it, we've tapped into our real-time information where we can see that it's currently experiencing service issues. Now when I scroll up, it's highlighted here in our trouble ticket map, and we can see based off of the symbology, we have a high volume of trouble tickets being reported in that particular node. So we do have trouble, we do have issues within that particular area, and we are getting customers complaining about it. So that is an area that we need to focus on or let operations know they need to focus on. The last outlier here is this one. So as I hover over it, we can see that there is no known issues, so it's not experiencing any service issues, but there is a spike in this particular node. If we look up here at the chart, it's only been spiking maybe the last 2 weeks is the increase. Now if we go up and look at the map, and if we zoom in here, we can see exactly where that region is, and based off of the insight that I know that this is the University of Tampa, and in the last couple of weeks, school has started session again after the winter break, and so this explains the increase in bandwidth being consumed based, compared to the average for that particular node. So this is one example of how you can use insights to pull in different data sources, start to correlate data, and kind of explore your information. A couple other things to point out about insights is within here, the nice thing about insights is that it's tracking all of your analysis and what you've done to create this workbook. So if you want to be able to send the same workflow to somebody else in your organization to create a workbook and modify it, it records all of that and you can share this with them. You can also share this particular model, or you can share the page out and share it into an application so management teams can start to look at and see what is going on within your network or within your marketing data or whatever it may be. So Insights is really that new tool, new product that allows you to tap into real-time information, tap into your big data store, do that data exploration, and is built directly within the new ArcGIS Enterprise and allows you to tap into all those new capabilities. So here I'm going to go through what some of those new capabilities are at 10.5, starting with the Geo Analytics Server. So this is kind of a new server product that connects directly within ArcGIS Enterprise and can tap directly within kind of your hosting server or your ArcGIS server and portal environment and exposes new tools to your organization. So it's a batch data processing engine that sits server side to allow for larger, faster processing. So if you were running analysis on your desktop and it was crashing or it was taking days to complete, you can now push all of that server side to expose more processing capabilities for that particular analysis. The tools for this are exposed through ArcGIS Pro, so you'll see a tab in there where you can go in and use the Geo Analytics tools, as well as within the web map view within Portal. So in the little analysis button in your web map, you can tap into these Geo Analytic tools. You can also utilize these tools within a scripted or modeling environment. So you can pull these tools into Model Builder or incorporate them into some Python scripting and push it server side. And finally, there's about a dozen tools that will be initially released, but as further development and releases of this product come out, more and more tools will be exposed. Another new server-side kind of analytic tool is the image server. So it's very similar to Geo Analytics Server, but it's focused more on the kind of raster formats that you have within your organization. So if you're looking to do that large-scale coverage processing, you can push all that RF engineering data in the raw format, do the processing on the server side. Allows for all these raster analytics in a fraction of the time, and there's even new spatial analyst functions that have been released with this product, and a whole new Python library, again, to be able to automate and script a lot of these new services. And then finally, our GeoEvent Server. So for those of you familiar with GeoEvent in the past, it was an extension to our server product. Now it's an entirely kind of redesigned server product that still connects directly within your environment, but it allows you to dedicate resources to different cores and machines. So if you've got input connectors with hundreds of thousands of events per second coming in, you can dedicate resources to those particular connectors. It allows for those high velocity data streams, so you can monitor and alert based off of network information, customer information, and so forth. And it works with stationary and moving events and a combination of both. So if you want to see things changing statically on a map, or static moving on a map, maybe just the attributes are changing, you can pull that in and you can analyze that, compare it to hundreds of thousands of moving events. And with this server product, you can store that information, so you can ingest it, store it directly within either the ArcGIS data store, or if it's big data, directly within the spatiotemporal big data store. You can analyze that information coming in on the fly, or you can do analysis after the fact at a later date, and you can visualize that information. So with the new stream services, they have been designed to be able to quickly visualize that information so that you can visualize hundreds of thousands of events changing dynamically on the map. So how do you get started with kind of these new Web GIS patterns and with ArcGIS Enterprise and with ArcGIS 10.5? Well, there's a few things that you can do kind of right off the bat, some things to think about as you're planning to either deploy some of this new technology or look into it further. You can approach a manager or management teams to discuss their challenges and talk to them about how kind of this new Web GIS can help them achieve their objectives. We've seen that talking to management teams and really relating the technology to their needs and their objectives really can help build justification to either looking into this technology further or building up that justification for investing in some of this new technology. You can take advantage of all of our Esri services and Esri training, as well as partners to make you successful along the way. So if you get stuck at any one point deploying this or need some assistance or need help training maybe other members of your organization, we are here to help you with this process. Discuss any of the new capabilities we saw here today on the webinar with your Esri representative, or feel free to email us or email myself with any questions you might have. We've always been very open to talking with our tele community about how they can deploy some of this new technology and any feedback that all of you have as well with technology today either not working what it needs for a particular workflow. Please pass all that information on to us so we can get it to development teams. And then finally, I'll leave you with a few things to consider as you get going. These are just based off of some of the the issue areas that we've seen in the past when deploying kind of the Web GIS, and especially when deploying kind of this new ArcGIS Enterprise with all of these new server capabilities. Really think about kind of isolated environments and development staging production environments. If you have production services that are feeding mission critical business systems and you're doing sandbox or development work, think about if you're doing some development and it stops or takes down a service, what that might do to the end solution or the end application that it's feeding. So really consider isolating these environments to ensure that your production services are running 24/7. Also consider different workflows that your organization might be performing that would utilize Web GIS to help you design the system. So if you are, if you've got workflows that are going to be big data and very machine intensive, think about what those workflows are so you can think about how many cores or how many machines you're going to need to help support those particular workflows and really help you kind of design and architect that Web GIS. Also think about the number of users that would be accessing your services. So do you have 5 users accessing one service, 5 users accessing 5 services, or do you have 100,000 users accessing one service? Depending on the number of users in your organization hitting your Web GIS, you'll need to plan accordingly. Just understand that, the nice thing about the ArcGIS Enterprise is that it can scale out. So just think ahead. If you have a couple users today, just understand that if you start exposing more and more to your organization, that your environment needs to be flexible enough to be able to scale out, to be able to handle all of those transactions or hits to your environment. And then also, finally here, think about the different deployment approaches. Today's webinar, we focused a lot on the ArcGIS Enterprise. Primarily, our Telog community is deploying this technology in their own infrastructure, ArcGIS Enterprise, and using ArcGIS Online kind of less and less. But think about what deployment approaches, because there are benefits to both of these type of approaches. You may want to deploy a hybrid approach where you've got your mission critical and sensitive corporate data on ArcGIS Enterprise behind a firewall, and you're taking in some of those new Geo Analytics Server capabilities or GeoEvent Server capabilities, so you're deploying ArcGIS Enterprise. But you may want to have a hybrid with ArcGIS Online where you can share information to contractors or the public, or you want to keep all the base maps, the demographic data, and some of the geoprocessing tools up in our hosted environment and tap into those versus deploying and hosting all of those in your own infrastructure. And so with that, I think we're going to go ahead and open it up for any questions.
Fantastic. Thanks, Patrick. A lot of great technology and very useful. Yeah, we're starting to get some questions in, and let me remind the audience, if you do have a question, just click on the tab there and submit it. First question we have here, Patrick. Do you need a separate infrastructure for insights?
That's a great question. So Insights taps directly within to ArcGIS portal. So Insights is really based off of the workflow that you're trying to perform. So based off of the high volume of data that you might be trying to analyze, for example, if you have Insights that has been deployed on the same infrastructure as your hosting server, where you've got map services feeding a coverage map, and you have hundreds of thousands of hits to that service maybe every minute or every day, and you're trying to perform heavy-duty analysis and crunching with Insights, that server is going to get bogged down. So think about the type of workflow that you're trying to perform with Insights, where you can still deploy it on your hosting server environment, but depending on the workflow, you may want to deploy another environment, kind of an isolated system of insight that you federate to your hosting environment to be able to perform those insight analysis and tap directly into your big data store.
Great. One of the questions we get here is, will this presentation be available for later viewing? And yes, we will post the presentation on our website, and we also are recording the presentation. So if you wanted to review it, not just the presentation itself, but actually listen to Patrick as he discussed the technology, the capabilities, and the value propositions, that's going to be available as well. Here's another question we have here, Patrick. Can we integrate an existing big data system with ArcGIS Enterprise?
Yes, the answer is yes. So we have released a big data store where we've essentially taken our geodatabase and put it on steroids to enable big data ingestion, analysis, and storage. But you can definitely tap into other big data databases and pull that information into the ArcGIS Enterprise environment. So if you have a SAP HANA infrastructure and database, or you have Hadoop, you can definitely tap in through a variety of our connectors.
Okay. Here's a question about level 1 and level 2 users. I've heard about level 1 and level 2 users. Can you explain the difference?
Yep. So with ArcGIS 10.5, there has been a slight modification to the named users. There's now 2 levels of named users. There's a level 2, which everybody who has deployed a Web GIS in the past year through ArcGIS Online or through ArcGIS Server and Portal is used to using level 2 named users. That allows you to do editing, that allows you to define if they are read-only or if they are an admin. So basically level 2 gives you full capabilities of the platform. We've also now released a level 1 named user which from a pricing standpoint is less than a level 2, but you have limited capabilities. So with a level 1 named user, it's essentially read-only. Only read-only of the data and the maps and apps. So you can now start to define which of your users you want to just be that read-only. Maybe they're just accessing the system once a month to look at one map. They can be a level 1, while other members, maybe GIS professionals, and or people that are out in the field editing data can be a level 2. And to add to that, if you deploy ArcGIS Enterprise on-premise, the level 1 and level 2 named users does not mean that sharing publicly or to your entire organization is going away. So you can still share content to your organization that is shared behind a firewall and give anonymous access to members of your organization. So that is still available, but with the level 1, you can now start to track, who's coming in and out and who gets access to what versus just exposing all the services and maps to anyone within the organization through anonymous access.
All right, thank you. Where does ArcGIS Server fit into this model?
Yep. So ArcGIS Server is still a core component of ArcGIS Enterprise. So ArcGIS Server is kind of that center piece there for what we call kind of that hosting server, that hosting environment. So tapping directly into spatiotemporal, big data store, or any of the ArcGIS data stores where you can expose the services through the ArcGIS server and directly within kind of that system of engagement, content management system, that portal environment. So ArcGIS Server will tap directly into the new server products, Geo Analytics, Image, and GeoEvent, and kind of that whole complete picture is kind of the ArcGIS Enterprise. So it's all kind of working together as one platform.
Okay. Will Insights work on ArcGIS Online?
Another good question. So right off the bat with this latest release, Insights is only available in ArcGIS Enterprise. So it's an app within Portal, but the development teams are planning on pushing Insights into ArcGIS Online. And as we know, the SaaS offering ArcGIS Online and kind of the in-your-own infrastructure software ArcGIS Enterprise, the roadmap is to keep those at these same capability levels. So some of the other server products, you'll start to see some of those capabilities come into ArcGIS Online over the next year.
Okay. Here's one. Can you explain a little bit more what type of hardware is needed for GeoEvent Server?
Right, what type of hardware? So again, with these kind of enterprise grade server products, it really depends on the workflow. So depending on what you plan on doing with GeoEvent will define the amount of hardware that you need. So you can still use one machine with 4 cores and do all of your GeoEvent work on that one machine. But if you're doing 100,000 events per second coming in, you may want to separate your input connectors on a set of machines with their own dedicated services and cores, and another set of output connectors or processing on a separate machines. So with the new GeoEvent, you can define what machines you want to do what, and it's very flexible. And the other piece that I'll add too is GeoEvent is going to become a SaaS offering as well. So we will have a fully defined SaaS offering that will utilize Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure, where if you don't want to host GeoEvent, you can go through our services group and we can host that infrastructure in the cloud and help you define what the workflow is and just have that as an output feed into the rest of your ArcGIS enterprise.
Here's one that came in while you're talking about that. I assume these products can be run as a VMs?
Yes. Yep.
GeoEvent Server or Geo Analytics Server functions independently. Can GeoEvent Server or Geo Analytics Server function independently without ArcGIS Server?
No, they cannot. So when they're separate installs, but when you go through the install process, it is going to ask for your, where is your core ArcGIS server. So you'll need to have that set up first before setting up kind of these other server products, so you can point to that server.
You talked about a hybrid approach. When you do a hybrid approach, what type of data or functions would you want behind a firewall, and what would you want outside the firewall?
So let me try and just rephrase that. What functionality would you want to keep on-premise or in your own infrastructure versus what functionality would you want on ArcGIS Online or up in the cloud, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Again, it really depends on your organization, your infrastructure, and kind of really your game plan. You can deploy everything in your own infrastructure. You can host all of our demographic data. You can host all the base maps, in your own services. Just be aware that it's going to take a lot more storage and be a lot more pressure on your server. So it really depends on the cost, the budget that you have, and how you want to deploy it. Typically, again, what we've seen is the base maps, the living atlas data, keeping that kind of up in ArcGIS Online, and then just tapping into those services in ArcGIS Enterprise, and keeping mission-critical data kind of behind your own firewall. But there may be times where your organization says, yes, this type of data you can share outside of the firewall, and you may want to expose it directly through ArcGIS Online and have it hosted there, so it's not being hosted and taking data storage on your own server. So it really depends, and if you have any questions there, my suggestion would be talk to your Esri representative or email us if you don't know who that is, and we can kind of look at what a best deployment approach would be.
Okay, is Citrix deployment supported?
That is a good question. I am not 100% sure, but we can look into that for you.
Okay, that's one we'll take as an action item there. What operating systems are supported? Window versions, OS, Linux?
Yep, so if you go to our resources page, and if you go to the old ArcGIS Server page, everything has been updated for ArcGIS Enterprise. It will have on there what is supported. As far as I know, OS 10, as well as any of the windows going back to, I think, Windows 7, as well as Linux is supported for ArcGIS Enterprise. But to double check and keep me in check, please refer to our resources page.
Here's one. Is Capacity Planning Tool supporting the latest version of ArcGIS 10 for enterprise GIS planning?
Is the Capacity Planning Tool? I guess I'm not 100% sure on what the Capacity Planning Tool is. Okay. If you would like to send an email to me directly, kind of explaining what the Capacity Planning Tool is that you were using, we can definitely look to see if it works on ArcGIS Enterprise. But ArcGIS Enterprise is the same technology, just far more advanced for bigger workflows, bigger workload. So if you're using the Capacity Planning Tool today, 99% sure that it can port over to ArcGIS Enterprise.
Okay. Here's a good one. Are you able to connect the ArcGIS to network monitoring systems?
Yes. Yes, you can. So there's a variety of ways you can do that. And we talked about GeoEvent Processor, or GeoEvent Server, sorry, and there's probably a dozen different connector options, TCP strings, JSON formats that you can tap directly into those assets if those assets are exposing it into your network. You can also create your own connectors through the software development kit, or our partners and services can help you there as well. Or the other option would be to, if it is exposing that information into your network through a web service, you can build a connector yourself that just either feeds it directly into a map or feature service, probably a feature service, and then update the database that way. But typically we've seen GeoEvent being used as kind of that middleman to really handle the amount of data that is coming in and to be able to parse through it, right? So you may have 9 out of 10 pieces of data coming in that you just want to either store somewhere or not store and just leave alone, but then you have that one piece of data that says there's an alarm, and that's the one you want to store or visualize or send to somebody. So GeoEvent allows you to set up kind of those business rules with that data coming in.
Okay, great. We have some more questions coming in, but we're running up against our time, and we want to be, we want to recognize and appreciate the time constraints that our audience has. So if we've not gotten back to you with some of these questions, we'll reach out to you individually and get you some answers there. So Patrick, I want to thank you, and I want to thank our audience. Great presentation, a lot of interest, and look forward to seeing everyone at the other 5 webinars that we have planned for the year. So everybody have a great day, and talk to you next time.